Ferrari could have secured a podium finish at the 2025 Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix, despite a disastrous Saturday of qualifying, and a weekend that initially seemed challenging for the Italian team. Both Ferrari SF-25 cars struggled with grip during the wet qualifying session, leaving Charles Leclerc starting from 9th on the grid. Despite this setback, there was a clear opportunity for the Monegasque driver to finish in third place, particularly after the McLaren disqualification, if the Ferrari pit wall had managed tire strategy with more attentiveness and precision. While it cannot be described as a straightforward error by the team, it was nonetheless a missed reaction during a crucial part of the race weekend, which ultimately cost the Italian side a potential podium result that they could have celebrated with both drivers. The Maranello team opted for a split strategy between the two drivers, which was inevitable given the very different starting positions of Charles Leclerc and seven-time Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton. Following the usual Sunday morning team briefing, Ferrari decided to equip Charles Leclerc with medium tires, which were in line with the strategy being pursued by the leading group of cars in the race. In contrast, Lewis Hamilton, starting from a position significantly further back on the grid, was assigned the white-banded hard Pirelli tires. The plan for the British driver was to extend his first stint as much as possible and to attempt an overcut on a group of slower cars, allowing him to gain positions later in the race while the track conditions evolved. In the opening laps, Charles Leclerc focused primarily on overtaking Oliver Bearman, who was holding a position directly ahead of him, before setting his sights on catching Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. During this phase of the race, the Ferrari pit wall guided Charles Leclerc extensively via radio on how to manage his tires effectively. They emphasized the importance of not overexerting the car through certain critical corners, including turn 11, which is a very fast left-hand bend that places a significant amount of energy onto the tires, making it particularly challenging to maintain optimal grip over multiple laps. Meanwhile, the McLaren team communicated with Oscar Piastri to warn him that the Ferrari SF-25 had a less loaded rear wing compared to his car, making it increasingly difficult to keep Charles Leclerc behind. At that point in the race, the two Ferrari SF-25 cars were registering some of the highest top speeds on the straights. This advantage enabled Charles Leclerc to overtake Oscar Piastri on his first attempt successfully. It is also important to note that Oscar Piastri was simultaneously dealing with significant front tire graining, which further affected his ability to defend effectively against the Monegasque driver. One of the critical aspects of the race that proved particularly difficult for the team to manage was the front tire graining on the Ferrari SF-25 of Charles Leclerc. Over the course of the stint, Oscar Piastri's graining also worsened, but the Ferrari team did not respond proactively. While the Australian driver pitted on lap 22, the team continued with the initial strategy for Charles Leclerc, believing that attempting an undercut at that stage would not be particularly effective. Notably, just 4 laps earlier, Ferrari had received crucial data indicating that Charles Leclerc was experiencing significant graining on his tires. Despite having this information, the team decided to extend his stint as long as possible, attempting to maximize track position without adjusting to the emerging situation. This delayed reaction to Oscar Piastri's tire issues ultimately prevented Charles Leclerc from reaching the podium. He finally pitted on lap 25 to switch to the hard tires, but by this time, the pit stop placed him behind Oscar Piastri's McLaren. Between laps 22 and 25, Charles Leclerc's pace dropped noticeably, allowing Oscar Piastri to gain over 3 seconds during that short period. A closer look at the telemetry data illustrates the difference between the projected pace of the Ferrari SF-25 and the actual pace of the car during those laps, showing that the Maranello team's failure to respond immediately contributed significantly to the time lost on track. Following the pit stop, Charles Leclerc found himself stuck behind a DRS train formed by Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes W16, followed closely by Oscar Piastri in the McLaren number 81. Kimi Antonelli was carrying a 5-second time penalty, and Ferrari's objective was to overtake him at the finish line to secure a higher finishing position for their Monegasque driver. Unfortunately, Ferrari narrowly missed achieving this target, falling short by just over 0.2 of a second. During the final 5 laps, the Italian driver pushed hard to maintain position, creating a sufficient gap to secure the position ahead of Charles Leclerc at the checkered flag. In conclusion, it was a disappointing weekend for Ferrari, particularly when considering the double penalty applied to the two McLarens for abnormal plank wear, which effectively disqualified the orange-colored cars from the final classification. Had Charles Leclerc remained within 5 seconds of Kimi Antonelli, he would have secured a well-deserved podium finish, making this a particularly bitter missed opportunity for the Scuderia. The combination of a challenging qualifying session, suboptimal tire management, and a lack of timely reactions to evolving race conditions ultimately meant that Ferrari was unable to capitalize on circumstances that could have delivered both drivers strong results. Despite the potential for a podium finish, Ferrari's Las Vegas Grand Prix weekend will be remembered as one to forget, highlighting the ongoing challenges of managing the SF-25 under difficult track conditions. The race underscored the importance of swift decision-making, accurate tire management, and proactive communication between the drivers and the pit wall, all of which are critical elements in maximizing race performance and translating car speed into strong finishing positions. It wasn't a blatant blunder, but it was a missed reaction at the critical moment. In a season of fine margins, Las Vegas was another painful reminder of how quickly opportunities disappear when tire management goes wrong. Once again, Ferrari missed the podium in Las Vegas, allowing Mercedes and Red Bull to extend their lead in the Constructors' Championship. With just 2 races remaining, including a sprint event in Qatar in less than a week, the team's hopes of securing second place in the Constructors' Championship are diminishing. Vasseur made it clear that the team's main priority remains unchanged, stating that the objective is still to win a race. The French manager noted that the pace in Brazil had been strong, while the most recent weekend had been more difficult due to the outcome of qualifying. He explained that the team needs to put all elements together, aim for a clean weekend, and try again in the upcoming round. The race proved even more difficult for Lewis Hamilton. Despite making a strong start, he ultimately finished in 10th position, collecting only a single championship point. Vasseur said that recovery had been possible, as demonstrated by Kimi Antonelli, whose key advantage had been running in clean air for 47 laps. He explained that following another car too closely leads to significant tire degradation. Vasseur added that Lewis Hamilton had begun the race well, but once the team fitted the medium compound, the situation became more complicated, and they found themselves somewhat lacking in overall race pace. When asked whether Lewis Hamilton could have started on the soft tire, Vasseur commented that with hindsight it was easy to believe that would have been the better choice, but at the time no one had expected the hard tire to last for such a long stint. He remarked that this approach had not been part of the initial plan. Vasseur said he was unsure whether Mercedes had intended such a strategy from the beginning, or whether they had chosen to extend the stint after seeing their pace, but he believed it was mostly a reaction to the situation. According to him, the general plan across the grid had been to use hard and medium tires, with some teams even uncertain about committing to a 2-stop race. Ferrari had already planned to be aggressive with a single-stop strategy, but running a 0-stop race like Kimi Antonelli was, in his words, an extremely aggressive approach.